In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the pros and the cons in using a 4K TV as your computer monitor in your home office or gaming-oriented setup. Stay tuned. What's going on, guys? It's Quasi Dog here, and like I mentioned before, in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the advantages to using a 4K TV as a PC monitor. Now, if you guys aren't strangers to my content or channel, you'll know that I've actually been using the TV behind me as a computer monitor for maybe the better part of 1 to 2 months. It's actually been a little bit longer than I tend to realize. The panel behind me, of course, is the Hisense Q9G, also known in the US market as the H9G. But most of these rules will still apply to the Q8G or the H8G as well, with the exception of the 120 Hertz support. So let's go ahead, let's jump into exactly how I'm using it, what benefits I find, maybe some of the downfalls, though there are very few, and we're gonna discuss that right after we talk about today's sponsor. Are you tired of looking at that Windows watermark every time you use your PC? Then do yourself a favor and visit vip/scdkey.com and pick up yourself a heavily discounted version of Windows 10 Pro on an absolute budget. While you're there, be sure to check out all the other keys they have as well. Origin, Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, you name it, they probably have it. Take a look at the video description below to learn more about their service, as well as to see how to get a discounted version of Windows 10 Pro OEM version on an absolute budget. So as you can see behind me, we have a pretty big display. This one that I'm choosing to use is actually the 55-inch variant, but of course, depending on the model number, whether it's the 8 series or the 9 series, this could fluctuate between 55-inch and all the way up to 75-inch. I don't know how you would sit in front of the 75, but that's neither here nor there. This one, of course, is the H9G, or in the Canadian market, the Q9G, and this offers a number of advances that I personally find more beneficial than a PC monitor. So the first thing to discuss is just generally the size. So if I turn around, you can see over here, this is absolutely huge. To put things into perspective, I started with, quite a while ago, my office setup being a couple of 24-inch monitors. I've tried a couple of 27s. I even went up to a 34-inch ultra wide. And of course, none of those compare to the raw real estate that you get with a 55-inch TV. Now, one caveat with this one, and what I would recommend for you guys, is of course, take a look at a 4K TV. If you go with 1080p, you're really not getting good screen real estate, you're not getting great scaling. 4K effectively means that I have a number of small 1080p displays as far as the footprint is concerned. And for my workflow, whether it's browsing a couple of different windows, maybe having Photoshop and Premiere and my color grade in Premiere all up on the screen at once without the need for monitors, the real estate is really the number one factor and kind of deciding trend that pushed me towards doing this. And I haven't looked back. I doubt I could try to use anything less than what I have right now, being in the 55-inch. I love it that much. Now, to address a con, of course, a 55-inch TV for some may be hard to sit in front of. I have maybe on the best of days 2.5 feet between me and the monitor. So things on the upper echelon of the screen, they are kind of tiring to kind of look up and stress my neck at. Actually, in my last video, for those of you who, again, keep up with the channel, I had some A-roll going of me as I was using the PC with some screen capture, and I didn't realize exactly how far I have to tilt my head up if I'm using something at full screen. I was running screen cap, so that's why every window was kind of max resolution. But for the most part, and I'm gonna turn my back to you guys for a second, and I'm gonna open Google Chrome, And you'll see this is the scaling that I'm used to. So even if I move out of the way a little bit, you're going to see that I'm kind of trying my best to mimic the real estate that I would get with maybe a 32-inch monitor, maybe even a 27. And I find this super comfortable. Not only that, but if I go ahead and I open another tab and I bring the window all the way over, I can shrink these down so they fit a little bit more appropriately side by side, but I can watch a video and I can browse on something else. And again, this is one screen. This already feels like two displays, and I still have room in the upper quadrant. So screen real estate for multitasking is really kind of like the number one thing for me, something that I absolutely love on a panel like this. The second big advantage of using a TV compared to a monitor, other than I guess the resolution if you talk about 4K, would be the brightness. Now, the con to this as well is sometimes it is very bright. In this case, the H9G or the Q9G that I'm using, on paper, it's set to spec at about 1,000 plus nits. I have no calibration tools or measuring tools, but there have been professionals that have gotten these displays, and no, they're not cherry-picked, sit down. They've calibrated these and kind of measured the nits output, and they're pulling anything between like 1,200 and some of them up to 1,700 nits. And that's way brighter than you're going to get for a PC monitor. This is actually scaled down to about 35% brightness, but I still have the full array local dimming cranked right up to 100% to make sure that I'm getting great contrast and full utilization of the HDR mode of Windows, which by the way has gotten a lot better. It was really bad before. Jumping in and out of games had like some weird pink hue issues when you went back to the desktop, but for the most part, it's great. I've had no issues in the last couple of months. But the brightness is great. So for you creatives out there that are editing photos or doing video work or anything like that, it's really, really nice to get a better representation of your contrast and things like that. For gaming, it's fantastic. Colors look great. And compared to a monitor that usually pushes like 250, 300 nits, you can get good ones, but of course you're gonna pay extra for that. I find the brightness of a TV absolutely fantastic. So I guess pro number two would be just the overall brightness, how it replicates your colors and things like that. Mine, of course, this is not going to be 100% spec for like Adobe RGB or sRGB or anything like that. That, again, you're going to pay for when it comes to a calibrated monitor. But Ratings does have some great white balance 2 and 20 point white balance settings specifically for this TV. I'll link it in the video description below. And it really gets your colors pretty close. For those of you who, again, are creatives, I personally just rely a little bit more on my scopes when I do video editing, just to make sure that if I can't quite perceive the way that colors need to be, that I can use my scopes just to kind of gauge where I'm at for my flesh tones and making sure that I'm not blowing out or oversaturating anything. So really good brightness, doubled over that, tripled over that, rant over. The next thing that I really like specifically about this TV, again, this is the Q series in Canada, the H series in the US, is these TVs are actually using quantum dot panels. Now, there are a couple of different variants in panels. The quantum dots, they're VA. So the main drawback or issue with a VA panel is your viewing angles. So you will start to skew and distort your colors if you have severe off-angle viewing. These TVs, they have better than average viewing angles, but 9 times out of 10, you're kind of centered directly in front of your TV or your monitor. So skewing colors shouldn't matter that much. If anything, I might see it if I look like way up in the far left corner because I am a little bit lower right now than the monitor. If I had it my way, by the way, this would be a lot lower. I just mistakenly built my desk too high and it's built in, so there's not really a lot I can do about that. But once I get some flooring down in the office, I'll be kind of up farther and maybe it'll level out. But being a VA panel, again, viewing angles, not the best, not the worst. Most of the time, people tend to try to gravitate towards IPS panels. I don't know of any TVs that use it, but the benefit of a quantum dot, not only do you have fantastic colors, fantastic brightness, there is no risk of burn-in whatsoever. So for something like a computer desktop, especially if you're like me and you don't put your PC to sleep, you have static imagery on your screen in the exact same spot for a very long amount of time. So not only can you be sitting here, and again, I could be browsing in these small windows, but my Adobe Creative colorful icon is not moving at all on the screen. So looking at something like maybe an OLED as an example, because we're not going to talk about plasma, some of you watching this probably don't even know what a plasma TV is. But on an OLED panel, they've gotten a lot better, but the risk is still there of screen retention and burn-in. Not an issue on a quantum dot panel. So for a monitor or something, even like TV related, and I talk about this in my dedicated TV videos, things like sports, things like CNN that have a persistent news ticker, anything that's static on the screen that stays for a very long amount of time, you run the risk in most panel technologies of burn-in, making them very poor choices for computer monitors. Quantum dot, A+, not gonna have burn-in, which is great. Being a VA panel, your millisecond response time is definitely not going to be as good as an IPS monitor or an OLED TV. Those technologies, one, IPS is optimized primarily for smartphones and for PC monitors for speed. And of course, OLED, you pay crazy amounts of money. That's all I'm gonna say. We're gonna keep it PG. You really pay for that response. But Hisense does a very good job with these TVs to get your millisecond response time in game mode, which is what I'm using here, down between about 12 and 14 milliseconds. So for non-competitive gamers, you know, people that aren't out there playing CSGO, maybe casual gamers, I play Modern Warfare on this, and I don't really see a big tangible difference between that and my BenQ MLG RL2460H that I used to use that had a TN panel with a 1 millisecond response time. 14 is more than livable. So I don't see any delay. I don't even know if you can see that going across the screen. I don't see any delay when I use the... I had a frog in my throat. Please hold. Much better. So I don't see any delay when I'm moving the cursor, when I'm playing games, when I'm doing anything. 12 to 14 is a great response time. And that's something, again, that's very key when you're using a computer monitor or a TV as a computer monitor. Using this TV, let's say in like vivid mode, where there's so much going on with post-processing to give you like a hyper-realistic image, that's where we're pushing like 110 milliseconds. There's some TVs that push, you know, into the 200 milliseconds. That is like a tangible feel, a tangible delay with your clicks, a tangible movement speed feel. Like you can feel it. It's a computer monitor. You interact with it all the time. 14 milliseconds, great. Speed-wise, love it. Competitive gamers, as a con, you're probably going to want maybe a separate gaming monitor, something that has like your 1 to maybe your 4 millisecond response time. For me, I think this is absolutely fantastic. Now, we talked a little bit before about one of the differences between the H or the Q8 and the H or the Q9G, and that would be whether or not you're utilizing either a native 60 Hertz panel or a native 120 Hertz panel. This one here, the H9G or Q9G, it does have a native 120 Hertz panel. It only has HDMI 2.0B, so you are not going to get 4K 120 Hertz. That's reserved right now for HDMI 2.1, which is very new to market. You are going to pay a lot of money for a TV with that. And at the end of the day, unless you're looking to upgrade and be a very early adopter into something like the RTX 3000 series GPUs, you can't push 4K 120 Hertz anyway, unless it's just general desktop. For the most part, your games, you'd run them in such low settings you wouldn't see a tangible return. That being said, HDMI 2.0B and specifically the H9G, Q9G, it can, and yes, it can, because there are naysayers that say it can run both 1080p at 120 hertz and 1440p at 120 hertz. Now, whether or not it's true or fake 120 hertz, and by fake, I mean utilizing black frame, I can't talk today. This is just off the cusp, by the way, so it is what it is. But BFI, or black frame insertion, where essentially what it does is adds a frame in between every frame or every second frame to simulate the motion smoothness of 120 hertz. It could be using that. You could use a high-speed camera. You could kind of nitpick and go through that, but regardless of what it's doing or it's not doing, at 1080p or 1440p, 120 hertz, it has no problem providing you smooth motion. I've tested this in games like Call of Duty. I've tested this in games like Horizon, and I've also tested this on the UFO test, all of which do show 120 hertz. So take that for what you will. There's a lot of documentation online that say it will not do it at any resolution. I did find that if I set the resolution in like the Windows settings in Windows 10, it wouldn't do it. Specifically with my GTX 1060 using the NVIDIA control panel, I can create a custom resolution and it will function. And it functions fine. I see no degradation in the quality or anything like that. For me personally, I'm a console pleb. As much as I want to, other than Warzone, I don't play a lot of PC games because it would just lock me in my basement, and I like being upstairs for the most part with my family. So I leave this at 4K 60 because for me, the tangible return is there for the 4K real estate, for the 4K scaling, which I have this set to 125%, Chroma 444, which font is beautiful and very readable. But I leave mine at 4K 60 because I like the real estate, and it allows me to properly edit my 4K. I guess this is recorded in 4K 24, but there's nothing that I'm pushing 4K 120 frames to really, 1080p 120 or 1440p 120. There's nothing I'm doing that I need to push that speed. For me, 60 hertz is enough. I've run, the highest monitor I've personally run for a long period was an LG that I overclocked to 75 hertz. And gaming, it makes sense. Productivity, 60 is fine. The extra bump in resolution really makes it feel like I have 4 1080p monitors and not one giant 1080p or 1440p monitor with terrible scaling. So 4K 60, Chroma 444, it's perfect. I love it. Major advantage. I can switch very easily. If I do want to play games at 120 frames, I can do that. My 1060 in most of the content that I do choose to play on PC, it ain't doing so great. It's not a bad card, but there are very demanding games out there and I can't quite push anything over like maybe, 90 frames. So again, I don't see the advantages to anything else other than 4K 60, so that's where I use mine. But again, I can't stress it enough. You can do 1080p or 1440p at 120 hertz. So that's pretty cool. The other thing I find kind of cool and kind of fun just about using a TV, or specifically a smart TV for a PC monitor, is if there's a point in time where I'm running a Windows update or I'm running NVIDIA driver updates, or it does something where I'm bored and my phone's dead because it happens way too often, and I just want to do something for a couple of minutes, all I have to do is press my remote, and now I have Netflix, I have YouTube, I have everything. I can even use Google Assistant, and I could just tell it to put something on there. And it's got a Firefield microphone, it's got a microphone in the remote, I've got a Google Home that's synced up to it. So it really opens up a lot more avenues for me. And if I want to hook up my PS4 Pro down here, right now, again, it's upstairs in the living room so I can be with my family when I play. PGA Tour, 2K21, fantastic game. Even if you don't golf, play it, it's great. But it really opens up the opportunity for me to do a lot more at my desk than just use my PC. And that I find super, super cool. So we're just gonna go back into computer, takes a second, and it's super quick. Yeah, I don't know, ranty video. You guys said you wanted it, so I'm here, I'm making it real quick. I will probably never go back to using a PC monitor. I love this real estate. I can do so much. I can have so many windows open. It's big, it's bright, it's beautiful, it scales fantastic. Growth potential is there for me if I do replace my GPU and I do want to game in 1440p at 2K resolution at over 100 frames, at 120 frames or whatever. I can do that with this. Now, are there other TVs that would make a better monitor? Yeah, probably. I would probably say maybe like an OLED, of course. The 2021 Visios look fairly interesting. They're gonna support variable refresh rate because of course they will be HDMI 2.1. So you can push the 4K 120 Hertz. Most of you won't need that though. And this HDMI 2.1 hype train is, I think, a little unnecessary because, and I hate the term future-proof, but as future-proof as it is, you're going to invest so much money in being an early adopter to a TV that has HDMI 2.1. Those TVs, whether it be the Sony, I think 900H, the 2021 Visios, the Samsung Q70Rs, the C9s for the OLEDs, they're all minimum 500, if not 1,000 or more than something like this guy here. I'm in Canada, I don't follow the US MSRPs, but something like this guy here, I think in the US market is $999, and I think that might even be for the 65-inch of this TV. You're looking at well sub $1,000 for something like the H9G in the US. I think this panel's around like $1,200-1,300 in Canada. Or even if you don't need the 4K 120 Hertz panel at all, the Q8G or the H8G is still on paper measuring 700 nits, but people have found that it's, pushing up to like 900 to 1,100 nits. Not as many full array local dimming zones, but there's so many advantages to even that TV, and like that's like a $500 TV. It's under the cost of most 4K monitors, and you're getting only a small return and a much smaller display for pretty much the same amount of money looking at going with a dedicated monitor. Now, I'm not saying everybody should go out and get a TV as a monitor. There are people that would much prefer 100% sRGB, or much prefer something like true 144 Hertz or 240 Hertz. I think we're up to 300 Hertz. But I think a good majority of people, if you're looking to buy a monitor and you're not getting anything fancy, maybe you're gonna buy 2 or 3 monitors and you're gonna do a dual display or triple display. Check this out, because I swear it's gonna change the way that you use your PC. It certainly changed the way that I use mine, and it's like a cool focal piece in my room. I have, a couple of TVs over in my living room that's still like under construction. Some of you know that story, some of you don't. But like this is like just such a cool little scene for a backdrop in my videos, and it just allows me to do so much more with my PC and do it, I don't know, more efficiently. I'm at a loss. I don't know. These are the just kind of like record and talk to you guys, because I like talking to you guys as if I'm just talking to a friend. I don't script these things. I just want to be honest and upfront. And again, a lot of people have been asking about this video, when it was going to come out, why specifically this TV, and I'm being a little bit more broad in this topic when I say that, just generally a 4K TV will change your life when it comes to using it as a monitor, but specifically these ones, and the links to the 8 and the 9 series Hisense for 2020 will again be in the video description. They're big, they're bright, they're beautiful, they're fast, they're quantum dot for no burn-in, and they're priced accordingly. They have a couple of faults. I think the pros far outweigh the cons, and you could just do so much more with a setup like this, and I just think it's super neat and super cool. So that's gonna end my rant. I have no idea what this is gonna cut down to, but if you made it this far in the video, congratulations. You have the patience of a saint, or you like hearing my voice. Maybe a little bit of both. Maybe you're my wife. Who knows? But until the next video, guys, my name is Quasi Dog. You guys, as always, have been awesome, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Take care.